Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. Well, we're going to continue some of our summer painting. This time I'm going to be doing some flowers here. This is the Rose of Sharon. I love the Rose of Sharon. And they're actually, the photo there is pretty small, but they're actually a little bit bigger. They are a version of the hibiscus, and I absolutely love them. And I think I'm going to try growing them out here in Nebraska. So anyway, what I have here is a board. It is 18 inches this way and 11 inches this way. A little different size. I had it out there because I want to do this kind of cascading setup here. What I did was I took a bunch of Rose of Sharon, put them into Photoshop, added some blue backgrounds and stuff. Cool colors, overall cool painting. I think this would be kind of neat. We might warm up some of it, but I just thought that would be just a wonderful thing, cascading it down. And I'm going to try painting. I'm going to, of course, use some large brushes on the background, but I'm going to try painting it with one of my favorite brushes of all time. If you say to me, what is your favorite brush of painting all time? It would be a filbert. It used to be a size 8. Now it's a size 10 because as I go on through my life, I find that the larger brushes, like John Singer Sargent said, are more versatile. So, and I can roll and use the edges. So I'm going to paint it with a filbert. And I'm going to be doing a lot of paintings this summer with a filbert and showing everybody just what a filbert can do. Okay, so we have this board, and I've given it a coat of the Canvas Prep Medium, sanded it with 180 grit sandpaper, ready to go. Standard palette that I have out here, the only color that I added was just a shortcut color of that sapphire. Sapphire is made from Phthalo Blue, ultramarine blue, a little white, and a little black. So if you don't have it, you can make it. But it's a beautiful color. Leans just a touch to the blue violet side. So a little heavy on the ultramarine. And I'm going to take a larger brush, and I'm going to take some extender, and I'm going to take some of my sapphire out here, and we're gonna paint a beautiful, fun, impressionistic bit of Rose of Sharon. I don't want to get that too dirty there. So, what the heck? Oh, it's right here. We're gonna take a bit of my white. I don't want to get it too dirty with the blue. We'll take some of the white right out here, make this kind of a light blue here. That it will be the base. And again, being impressionistic, I won't probably cover the whole board. I love the impressionism of it. I love just to get the colors on here. And years ago I started studying Richard Schmid, and I of course I'll never be the artist that he was, but boy, I sure take some nice influence from his casual brushwork. His brushwork was just amazing. So something like that, leaving a few dead areas or negative space areas out there. Let's put a little bit of darker blues down here just for some, I want to have some interest into the background here. So I will just cast some different colors back through here. So that'll be nice. And that little bit of extender, it's amazing that the little bit of extender like that will keep the paint very wet. And another thing to remember, guys, is, especially with acrylics, it's how much paint you put on the surface. So even though we thin it out with extender and put that out, if you go really, really super light with the colors on there and kind of stretch them out a little too much, they'll dry faster. So colors that you put on that are very thin, even though you've added extender and stuff with them, they can dry faster because it's like a lake. A difference between a lake and a puddle. A lake doesn't dry up, a puddle dries up. And that's what you have to kind of keep in mind. So let's emulate some of the greens and stuff that are going to go back here, back behind, which is some of my favorite things to do is burnt siennas and greens. I love those. Maybe a little bit of our yellows in there. Let's just take some of these, pick these up, and put that right back down through like that. Again, I want the impressionism of it, okay? So I'm going to pull some of this out. Some of this, I'm going to cascade these flowers down here. And let's grab just a bit more of that burnt sienna and green here. Right like that, cascading it down. Concentrating my flowers up and through here. Letting some of these colors just kind of, pull out this way. Just Yeah, look for that. I just love the brush work on that. So I think that might work. And sometimes I get these backgrounds on. I get so excited about the backgrounds that I think they're just beautiful by themselves in the impressionistic kind of way. So let's do one of these big ones here. Now, that one's turned a little different than what I want. So I'm going to back out just a bit of that green. It would be okay if it was the blue, but I'm going to back out just a little bit, and I'm going to turn it maybe up like that. So that'll be the Rose of Sharon there, maybe a few others. Before we do this, let's take one of my other favorite painting brushes here now. In the last couple of years, it used to always, for years, you go back and watch all the older videos on the channel, it was the 3/4, and I've gone up to a 1 inch. I really love the 1 inch. So let's just push in some of these colors before I get going, just so we see some of these beautiful, maybe a little reds into them, some of these beautiful colors here. Red Violet, Quinacridone Violet, and just toss some of these colors back into this, painting the casual nature of this. And most of this is going to cover up, but it does start me into this feeling of casual painting that I want to do for this particular painting. So I'm thinking about the layers. You know, a lot of people say, what are you thinking about when you do this? There is a thought process here sometimes. And I'm thinking about, I'm looking through my main flowers, through the composition of a bush. You know, what does a bush look like? Where are some of the other colors and stuff that are the deeper parts, the deeper colors and, you know, flowers behind? What are they looking like? And that's what I'm imagining here. You know, what are some of these looking like? Let's take some of this with some of the blue. Beautiful color, maybe a little bit of light. So it's a little different kind of color. Bits of the blue into it. And we'll just whisper some of that down through here, letting some of that just trail off here. So it's a little bit of that blue. Nice, beautiful harmony. I love that spot right there. And I'm going to carry some of those colors into the centers of those flowers. I want the viewer to be up in here. So I may want some heavy duty. So let's go a little heavier here. Sometimes I'll use my knife for this. Let's go a little heavier right out up in here a bit. Put in some broken edges there. Right? And this nice heavier color. This is going to be up into my center of interest right up here. So maybe a bit of that. Let's just blur some of that out. You know, the viewer will maybe see that as a back flower up there, okay? We hope. Okay, so, but it's just, you know, today is a nice day. It's weekend day. It is hot outside here. It's over 100 degrees. Very, very dry heat out here in Nebraska. And it is hot. So it's a good day to stay inside and paint with the air conditioning. So let's go back and pick out. This is going to be this one right in here. I'll let some of that, look at that violet stays in this time. That's kind of pretty. About that size. I don't want to make them too big, even though the hibiscuses do get big. I'm not going to paint them life size, but right about like that. Maybe one right here turning and going out there, right? One right down here. We'll leave a space. Maybe one right down in there. And a few others coming down here. And some other, let's get a clean paper towel so I start to take off a little bit more here. Yeah, one right in here. Down in here. A couple of small ones as that comes right out there. And maybe some back ones back there. Let's just put some color in. Maybe a bit of light, a bit of our blue. See that blue makes with these, and this makes a beautiful soft color that is almost the color of these Rose of Sharon. And the Rose of Sharon come in all different kinds of colors, but here, let's just put in a soft little bit right here. Maybe that'll be one right back there. some edges, some fronts, some edges right here. So this one will turn kind of, very impressionistic here. Right? Don't try to make a perfect one. I love the filbert because, see, the filbert automatically makes the rounded petals. So I don't have to, I don't have to push the flat, in a specific way like I have to. I don't have to push the filbert in a specific way like I have to do with the flat. So, yeah, we'll push a bit, maybe a few little colors here. And there, with the summer, of course, comes, we're in cattle country. So in the summer, of course, flies come in. And there's one little fly that got in when I was letting the dogs out just a little bit ago. And he's been terrorizing me all morning here. I just noticed him go right back again. He wants to be part of the video here. So we'll just drop a little bit right here. Maybe this is one that's just going to be turned right there a bit. And I'm going to have that cooler violet kind of center in those. So we'll have a couple turn there. Okay, so let's go in here and into the centers of both my violets. So I'll push that center violet right in there. We're going to have yellow and stuff in there as well. So sometimes if I get too heavy there, I just push my brush. I'll lift off some of that texture so I can lay in a little bit of yellow, maybe any one of your yellows in there, just start to lay that in a bit right there. That will help us do our yellows here. And let's add some color here. While this is nice and wet, we'll add some more right in here. When we go to paint this one, we'll open that one up a little bit. Since I have two right there next to each other, we'll open this one up a bit here. In other words, we'll drop it down and open it up, I think, here. And this one right here, a little bit more of that violet right there. Right there, okay. And maybe some more contrast violet right in there. Just kind of tap. You can see I'm just using small taps and marks. It's like almost like sketching it in. That keeps them very, very casual here. And keep my brush moving. I'm way back on the handle of my brush. This keeps the tip of it very soft. Keeps the everything I'm doing with the brush very, very soft. That's why I like the long handles. For years, I was a short handle painter, and a lot of times, like when I paint trays and other specific pieces, I will use the short handle brushes. But I love, for the casual nature of painting, I love the long handle brushes. So it gets my hand further back here. So we'll put some yellow in there. Now, let's just go over and let's get some light and some of these colors. And we're going to paint back and forth between our lights and our colors here as we start to shape up. I'm just going to pull right through into that yellow a bit. Let it go out into the petal. That's fine. Here. And I want to use some small marks. So see, if I keep pulling in too much, the petal will become very stiff. So sometimes I'll do that. Use my finger or the brush, back it out a little bit here, and we'll vary the lengths of some of these petals, about 5 petals or so, and we'll push some of these other colors right here, pulling in and out. That'll look pretty neat. Maybe some of that real soft, a little too much there, blue and white, pretty colors. See, that blue gives that coolness to it. So a little bit of that blue, let that show up in there. And we're going to build this several times. We'll build these colors here. Let's soften this, make this just a little bit more red as we come down here towards the shadow side. Maybe, and I'm looking up to these, and I'm just looking for ideas for how to make the marks on the petals and get that casual nature to the flower here. So that's all I'm doing. Let's go back a little bit lighter. Now over here I have some open medium in the painting. This is the Matisse d'Hervan open medium. which makes the colors dry a little slower, but it also gives some body and some texture to it a little bit. So as I work with more lights, I'm going to add a little open medium to some of this here. Build with a little more light. And you can pick up almost a straight white because I have so much thick color. Now, normally you don't see me work with straight white right away, but I have a lot of color here onto the background. And so I'm going to go ahead and use some heavier white right now. Now, I want this to kind of tack up just a bit. It's nowhere near done, but I want it to tack up a bit. I'll come back up over here, slightly different color into this one here. So we'll just put some of this color around. We'll flatten it out a bit here so it angles a little bit, but not as much as that one. So we'll just flatten that out just a bit. Let's put some light color in there. Right, some light. And you got to remember with these colors, your acrylics are going to dry darker. So, you know, you're pretty safe to go pretty light with this. So we'll push in a little bit of an edge here. We'll let that sit there for right now. And maybe a bit into this one, this short, choppy little marks. Sometimes pull out, get a different mark. You just don't want to set the same mark out everywhere. And every once in a while, I'll come back with both of my violets and work them out into the petals here to get movement. So if I feel like a petal is getting stiff, so let's take it for up here for a second. If I feel like the petal's getting stiff, step back on your brush, take some of your violets and work the violets out slightly different from the center out. And that will take away some of the streaky marks that you have here and will add more casual nature to it. So I like to fill, but I'll roll over onto the edges here and I'm looking at taking out some of those heavier marks. That's what I'm doing here. And we'll add a little yellow in there. Maybe that center's going to go up that way. That one's going to go up this way here. Long ways to go, but I start to set the direction of some of these petals that I want. Maybe I want this one to pull out like this here. Maybe part of it petal comes out that way. Some of it a little bit more blue and violet, just like it's the back of it here. So you see, and it kind of turned here. There we go. Kind of turned down like that. And I'm going to want to really lace up the edges by giving them some wiggles and stuff like that. We'll wiggle and stuff and lace up the edges a little bit here. We'll do that as we get towards the final little bit of color. Right now it's not too important here. Right there, that's pretty good. And maybe this one turns. I love how that one kind of dips. So we'll use a bit of that, maybe a bit of open medium, a bit of our blues here. And push this one this way, coming this way. Maybe a little bit there, right like that. That center, just like it's in the rose, the center helps direct which way this little guy is looking, pointed out. So he's pointed out and down a little bit more. So if I want that, I have to raise my center up, the oval. So it's slight oval here. I have to raise it up this way. So it goes just a bit more side to side here. And almost a circle, but pull it down just a bit more. And that center will come out this way here. So we'll keep that in mind for that one. And see, the first part, now see, there's nothing perfect about that, and I don't need it perfect. I just need the first idea. So when I'm approaching a painting like this, especially one that's real casual, I'm not trying for perfection on anything because I want to keep it casual. So I know I've got to come back in here and straighten up and clean up and do all that kind of stuff, right? Which I will do. I don't have to do it all now. I'm busy looking at the composition right now. That's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm concentrating on, the composition here. And so we got a long ways to go. And so I want to, just get some of this stuff in here. So, and the question is, do I want to, do overall, these guys in the overall composition are smaller. These guys are going to be a little bigger. And I think I like the size of them down to here. Now, the actual hibiscus is about that size, a little bit bigger, actually. The ones that I've seen, there's a lot of different varieties of them, but, this one, I kind of like that size. But I want to do some more buds and blossoms and stuff in here. So we'll get to some of those colors. And their buds and blossoms are real easy. You just give them the impression here that there's going to be something there. The impression of it. So let's just give, we'll drop some right down in here. Like these are going to be little buds and stuff here coming off. Maybe a little one right in here. Yeah. One right in there. That's kind of neat. And some of those in there look more blue, like they have a lot more blue in them. That's kind of neat too. Let's come in with a burnt sienna and some green. So before I even get even close to what I'm going to do, I'm going to take some greens and stuff in here. And this is the one thing I love to do. I love to, especially if I feel like my petals are a little too perfect, I negative paint. This is one of my favorite things to do, is negative paint. So I come in and I use my background to shape up my flower here a little different. Or I go back and forth painting the background and the flower at the same time, which takes away some of the perfection of it. Sometimes I'll just slide this out like this and get that crossing over of the two colors, which helps me with a look of transparency or something like that. Let's small this down just a bit. And see, I just do that with some of the greens here. It just makes it kind of pretty. And it gives you some more contrast, visual contrast. So here we'll drop in a little bit more, maybe pull some of this out, like we may turn some of this into leaves or something, but I want that movement here like that. That's that movement. Let's drop some in right here. Oh, I love that bit of blue that just came out there. That casual here, just dance. See, this is what I used to call this for years and years and years when I taught. I traveled around the world, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, all throughout Europe, teaching and stuff. And we always called this the brush dance. You just take those colors, you model them up, and you let your brush just kind of dance through here, depositing some of these colors, and it loosens up the composition a little bit here, getting some of those colors in there as you build the contrast of it here. That's really kind of neat. I might take, now see, let's fill this up here. Yeah, see, that's a little dry. So let me show you something. So I take, and I usually use my mister bottle. Here it is. Let me reach right there. And I'll just mist a little bit on my paper towel, a little bit of water. What is water? Water is your solvent, so water will cut through. So just a damp paper towel, and you pull through like that, see? And I can blur out some of that color right there, see? And I pick up a few colors, but I'll just blur that out. And I like some of that light movement. Or some, so that looks pretty good there. Or I might, in a real casual painting, this is just to give you guys all kinds of ideas. Let's take some white, some open medium, and our knife like this, and I'll pull that down. Now you've seen me do this with the brush too, but the one thing that the brush does not do is this. See all that fracturing? And that is just magnificent. That just adds so much interest. And then you can take your knife flat like this and burnish it. And so you leave some of that interest in there. And that's just adds more of that brush movement interest. And then I can come back up on top of that and just start to build a little bit of this one in here. Softer. Does that make sense? So that you can start to build that back one there a little softer. Let's go a little bit of light into this. Right? A little bit of light. Maybe this just comes softly in here. Maybe this one. And we'll just paint right into that green. That'll help me get some transparency there. All right? And let a little of that green and stuff come here. Maybe a little edge of the light right here, a little wiggly edge. We'll make it look like the petal folds up right there. Right? A little difference. So that means that one's rocking up that way. So we'll give a bit of the light color, yellows, going up that way, right? And then we'll take this one back out to this side here, back out here. I'll fix some of that, you know, that's just the idea there. And then we'll tap some other reds, red violet, quinacridone violet, some of our other deeper colors in there to soften some of that. There we go. And then we'll come back. So now, see, one of the things you say, well, David, you've screwed up everything that you've done there. No, what I do is I paint my edges back and forth. Does that make sense? And so I'm still very early into the painting, and I want some of my edges here back and forth to be very, very soft. We will add some more structure to it. I'm just loosening up. My color's drying just a bit in my brush. Very hot today, so I'll just add a little extender. And we'll come back into here with a beautiful light kind of color here. And let's just do a beautiful little pull in here. Soft. And see, I'm not reloading my white. I'm letting it run out as I draw that petal around there. So, and I've got to be careful I want to have a little more light. I got to be careful that I don't get my marks too long. Otherwise, that will make the petal look stiff. So I'll add a few smaller touches in there to keep the petal from getting stiff. No big long ones like that. That makes your petal stiff, okay? That's the most important thing you got to remember. Here I'll start to light towards the center, maybe lift off a bit, and then a little bit side to side. Rolling the filbert over onto its edge, I can draw with it really easy. Maybe push in and out just a bit so I don't outline it too much, right? And let's come right over here. Maybe a little light edge like this. Pull some of that in. Let's grab some dark and a little blue maybe and paint some from the center out here to softly give that one a bit of color. Maybe, and see, I'll use that edge. See, I'll put a little bit of this light here. And let's just roll over onto that edge slightly right there and push this light right there. Right like that. Okay. And just some soft little blue. The violets here. Some soft little marks here. And I want to put some into the centers there. That works pretty nice. And so I'm looking, what I'm doing is I'm looking at all the movement in the petal. I just don't want them to be stiff. So sometimes I'll give a little bit of light out there on the edge. Like I may take a bit of the light here and draw a bit more of a light edge here. You know, maybe one or two here since I only got 4 petals. So maybe another look to like this is another petal up underneath it. There. And that. And then we'll take some of our dark here and we'll pull some of that out. Here, different amounts. Here, like that. And maybe some of that dark here with the blue. Add a little further on this shadow side. Just pull slow so I don't blend too much. It gives me a little different color or different look. See all the different looks that you can give these guys. They're really fun to paint, the big blossoms like this. Really fun to paint with all of their movement that they can have. And if you curve your brush, so you just don't pull your brush straight out. Sometimes curve it. Here, this is where I'm getting some detail work. This is why I like the filbert. I'll point up onto the tip, just the tip, and get some of that movement here, in and out. Makes a real pretty little flower here. We'll pull some of this out. And here we go. That's kind of pretty. Let's work this one a little bit more while we have it. Let's take some of our yellows together here. We're going to make the little cone shape here. Tap that down into here a bit of the color, right? We'll take maybe some Hansa and some white, just the edge of it here. Use just a corner of your brush here, and we'll tap up by the tip of the cone. Just tap that in here, like that. And I'll pinch wipe. Sometimes if I have a lot of yellow, I'll rinse, but I try to avoid it as much as possible because water is your solvent and you can add some problems there. I'll go back to just a little bit of my violet in here and push into this to shape it up a bit if I need to. I don't want to have an absolute perfect cone. I want the fractured edges and stuff there, but I do want to have it a little bit more structured than that. So back into some lighter color here, just like that. Maybe a little more yellow oxide, even a tiny bit of the burnt sienna down at the base here. That's pretty. Very casual right there. Now, maybe, so I always put on, so I got the shadow and stuff in there, right? And I'm always thinking reflected light and other things. So getting some light, very, very little paint in my brush, very light pressure here. Just pulling out like this, taking out just a touch of that shadow here, right up into there, and giving a different look to that petal, see? Let's give this edge. So I pick up some more white right here. Let's build up this edge a bit more to give some structure and some power to that edge. So we'll build a little contrast, a little heavier texture right up here onto this side. Pull it in a little bit here. That's kind of neat. Maybe a little soft. So see, I go back and forth. So now I'll come right up by that cone with a little blue violet and pull out. Now we're not going to do this to every single flower. This is only my center of interest flower. So a little bit of that blue and stuff. Maybe some of this pretty light blue right out in here adds a different accent color into it at the same time. See, it's a pretty little color here. Just a bit of that. If you get too much, just reach in with some of your violets. Tap some of that out. And that's kind of a pretty little, let's put some white, some heavier white, a little more light right up over here. Here, not big, huge, long marks, just some marks. Here, maybe turn this. We'll rotate so I get just a bit on the edge. And if I roll over onto the edge, then I can draw like a little petal edge, just real soft, right like that. And that's kind of pretty, maybe a little too much, so I just soften it out a bit here. And you can go back and forth. So these make real pretty petals like this. Let's take some of our dark, since this is our center of interest flower. Let's get our darks back in just a bit. Not super even, just a bit of it back in there, right? That nice contrast, some red violet. Just hit in the tip and pull out. Here. There we go, just a bit, just to say you did it there, right? Okay, so now let's put some soft, Maybe some open medium. I love it because open medium will give it soft and give me some feeling, a transparency and stuff to it, so everything is soft. Let's just put in a soft one back there. Lots of stuff we can do here to just get some soft colors here. Just these are impressionistic back here, so we paint them real quick, impressionistic here. Just pull in a little bit to give it the feel of petals and stuff, and then we'll let them just sit back there, right? Let them sit back there. Maybe just the idea of a little cone right there and some of our light on it right there as it sits back there. Let's give a little bit more onto this one here. Vary the colors, maybe a heavy little dose of red right into that one, and that will contrast that front flower. It's all a matter of contrast too. Little blue in the lights here, pulling back in there. A little bit of lights here. Tap some of it around so that you can get those deposits without pulling the big long strokes. Try not to pull the big long strokes because that's what gives it the stiffness. So you got to stay away from that. Let's put a little more light right down into here. Load up again. Let's put a little more light. Vary the edges of that petal. Pulling that in. And that light will set the whole feeling here that we want to have. How much light and interest and stuff. Let's go wiggle some of these lights right around the edges here. Push those around, in and out. And I love to leave the broken spaces there. In other words, this broken edge. It doesn't always have to have a perfect edge. You can leave a broken edge, especially in the ones in the back. They can get more transparent and have edges and stuff to them. So let's put that out. Maybe just the idea of the yellow, a bit of the yellow. Doesn't have to be perfect yellows because it's in the back. So you can have, we definitely aren't going to hit it with the light yellow. And that works. Now let's set back up into here. A little open medium, some of these colors. Let's express some of these colors right into this one. And let's really start getting casual now. I might, as I look at this, I might want to have a bit more of that red coming out right here. Right like that. That's pretty. That puts that guy right there as the dominant little one. Let's put this a bit more right here. So this one's going to come out more that way here. So a bit of this right here coming out of that. Some of our soft, some open medium, our blues, and our soft violets and whites here. Pulling in. Try not to pull too long. Pull some out. Push in and out a bit here too, so that it doesn't, so those petals don't get stiff. That's the hardest thing with blossoms like this, is we tend to get them a little stiff. I do too. So I have to really tell myself all the time, don't pull too long. So if they start to get stiff, push in and out, push out, break up some of that longer motion of that brush there. And here we go, just like that. Sometimes this big brush, just use the flat of it and just get real casual with it and just push it out there. Yeah, and maybe a bit more light, touch of the blue right here. Let's just build this one up a bit more right in here. So I'm seeing that I might want even more of a impressionistic look to some of these by having a little thicker color as I'm building this. So I may want to have some come in with a little more color. It gives a nice impressionism to it. You get that broken, fractured color here. Let's put some on here. Yeah, I know we put that shadow in there, but we might want to have, I'll put the shadow back, but what I'm building right now is texture, especially up into this one because that's a forward one. Does that make sense? And I'm always talking with you guys about using texture in the forward ones. Now, let's go back and push in just a bit of that shadow. See, I like this kind of fractured mark. That's what I'm looking for. A little more textured light. Let's bring that out a little further here. So I liked it with the impressionism. You try to capture the essence of the blossom, but you're not like painting a absolute perfect one. You want all of these different brush marks and movements and interests and stuff. That's what I'm trying to find my way and how I'm going to paint this. Let's take this softer blue, use it as a intermediate here between the light and the red here, which is really pretty. So I'll deposit most of it right between the light and the red there, right? Let's restate for like the fourth time the red right around here. A little darker red. But you see, each time I touch that, I get a little bit more. And now I've added some textures into that, which is quite a bit more to that flower, right? Which I like. Let's add some textures in here. Some dark right there. And some of this. We said we got to oval this side to side a little bit so it points down a bit. So we'll push it this way. Some of that. And then we'll take our yellow, pinch wipe my brush, take these yellows here. The cone will come out this way. Here. That's pretty. Points out that way. A little bit of Hansa. A little bit of white. Don't mix them up real well. Pick them up on the brush. And tap right there. Right like that. There. Okay. That's kind of pretty. And let's come down and add a bit of a cone here. And a little bit of both our yellows. There. We'll push that in and soften it out a bit. There. Like that. Let's grab some of our blue and white. Here, nice blue and white, softer colors. Here, some whites. Here. A little bit of texture to them. Brings this petal up a little farther forward here. And yeah, I like that. Maybe this one coming out a bit here. Push it. There. It's kind of a pretty one. See, sometimes, and it's what's happening here. If you notice, I start to speed up just a little bit as I start to find the technique that I want. And so you'll notice I'll paint faster, I'll paint less. You know, this first one, working on it and stuff, by the time I get back down here, then I go back and revisit that one up there. But by the time I get down to there, I've kind of set the technique in my mind. Does that make sense? You know, because I don't always go into, many times I try to, but I don't always go into a painting with exactly the look in my mind of how I want to do it. I let the brush start talking and I go from there. So, but I like this kind of stuff, these casual accent marks. That's how I like to paint it. So, you know, and I like that. So to like that feeling that's right there. Let me show you. So I just did that. I liked that on this real quick casual mark there. So I'll try to introduce that to my main flower by painting in and pulling into my main flower here, right? And I'll pinch wipe that color out of my brush. I'll take some of my blue and stuff that I had, maybe add some of that into that edge there. See, it gives more color interest to that flower. And then I'll reach out, grab some of those violets and light, and maybe just hit the edge, the tip of this one here, so that it picks up. So see, that one all of a sudden gets more character to it. And this is what I always talk about, revisiting your main flower of interest here. Revisit it after you do something else that you like. Go revisit it. So, and I can use this edge. So if I want to get more of that sheer edge, I just roll over and touch the edge like that, and I can create the little look. That's why I love the filbert. I'll just roll the filbert over to the edge, and I can do it easier with a filbert than any other brush. And that's why the filbert is my favorite painting brushes. You see me paint a lot with the flats. And that's so that I don't always paint the same. I don't always paint the same habits. But I do love the filbert. And see, I just come back, that little bit of green in my brush here, which is giving a dose of transparency, and I'll just hit some of those main flowers there, just like that. Now, so you see, as you do one, as you go down and say, oh, golly, that worked out pretty good, then you incorporate that, go back up and incorporate that, and all of a sudden your flowers start getting more and more and more interesting. Does that make sense? And that's what I'm looking for. So I always tell you all the time, we come back and paint the queen or the center of interest flower again and again and again. Well, we do. I do. All the time, and especially after I do something that I notice I really like on one thing, I'll go back and revisit. I'm going to take a little bit of my greens, my violets, some blues, and not exactly right up in that. I'm going to leave a little dark there, but I'm going to just leave a bit of interest here, just right like that. Here, maybe right in here. Pull some of that out right there. I just like that look. And all these others out here will soften. Like, see, I can take some blue, right, with some of those greens, some of this, that lighter color right here, and just paint some of it right up to that edge and soften that whole look so it doesn't look completely outlined. Does that make sense? Or I can take my lighter blue, something closer to my background here, and paint in and out and get some of that movement. Sometimes just pull through, soften that, break that linear motion there a bit. And if that doesn't work all the way, mist it, because that's dry, mist it with just a little bit of water here and pull back through. You'll soften, cut through that paint just a bit. And I like that. And sometimes, don't forget this. Remember what we did up there. Taking your blue and your whites here, and you can push into that and just break it. Because I like the knife because it gives these little, I can give little fractured edges to it. And I love the fractured edges. And I can take my bigger brush. Here we got this one in water. Got to be careful, water. I'll leave the water in here. I know I've got a solvent, and then I can pull through just a few times to soften that movement. Does that make sense? But I got a nice movement there. But I will want to soften some of this because I don't like it looking like it's outlined. So I will soften some of that out of there like that. And I like that kind of stuff. Here, maybe a little bit of those blue and violets here. Just a little bit of the blue and violet there coming out. Yeah, just blur that edges out there a bit. That looks nice. Let's have a little bit of that green there too. Push in, soft. Capture that back of that one. Maybe a little edge of the light right up here in the front that will really bring it forward. here, there. That petal kind of stops quickly there, so we'll just pull out like that. Maybe a bit of it right there. That's kind of pretty. It just sits up there. But that's what I like, those that gets more casual in nature as I'm going down here. So let's get some casual colors going into this one here. We're going to bend this one down a bit. Let's get some darker colors into the centers. And I'll start to paint with a certain speed because now I'm kind of figuring out the technique, and I'll paint with speed. If I slow down too much, I know some of you are screaming at me, slow down a little bit, Dave, but if I slow down too much, then I'll lose the casual nature of it. Does that make sense? So my brush has to move with a certain amount of speed as I'm trying to capture the freedom of these guys, of this. I love that. So we'll go more light. Let's put a little bit more light. Don't pull all the way because you'll make those petals stiff. Sometimes pull back, right? Make those petals stiff, and we don't want to do that. Here, a little bit. There. Let's pull, and some of this from the center out. Might leave it a little streakier on this one. Here. Give that just a bit. And bit of blue. We don't have enough blue into that one. So a bit of the light blue here. Touch into that. Bit of the light blue coming in. There. That's pretty. And that's a nice soft one. You know, I might, and it doesn't, you know, I don't want to do it too much because it competes up here with my center one. So we might leave it at that and just put a little cone of that coming out and a little bit of our yellow and white. There, just tap that a few times. And yeah, don't work it too much here. Here we go, like that. That's kind of neat, kind of soft. And see, so, you know, as I start to go down, I mean, I can give some, you can direct the petals, give some curve. So if I lift off like this in a slight curve, I start to curve these petals down. And, you know, that's how you direct them. Curving down, curving out. This one's kind of curving out. I have that real light little edge here, so you know, like I did over here, I can come back out here, just roll over onto the edge of that filbert here and give the petal edge the look of a petal edge here, just like that, see? So, and it makes it a little different. And that's what I want. I don't want all of them perfectly round. I start to get, I'm a left brain painter, so I go perfectly round, really easy. So, and I don't like that, but that's just the nature of myself. So we'll build that like that. That's kind of a little pretty one. Maybe a little bit more red right here. And I could increase the blue, but I think for right now, that's kind of neat, just dragging that down. Dragging that down here. Now, as I come down to here, so I want the viewer up here a little bit more, so I love this one. I know this one can come up even more. So let's go back and revisit it again. This time, some more white. White, pure white, maybe touch of blue. Pure white. And hit some more textures into this one. Which, boom, light, dark, brings that viewer up just a bit more. See, so now that bit of white that I'm adding in there, see, it's starting to climb this one in importance a bit more here. Right like that. A bit more right in here. Right like that. Maybe a bit of that medium blue right here. I love that blue. That violet to the blue is so pretty here. And maybe a touch of even darker violet. So what am I doing? I'm actually just increasing the light-dark contrast in on this one because I want the viewer up around here. So now all of a sudden your eye's coming up here a little bit more. Does you see that? And if I increase just a bit more up here, this one will be in support of it. A bit of the blue. So right in the mid area there, I'll go from the violet right into the blue into the white. And let's increase the white right into this one up by the tip. Maybe a bit of blue right here. There. That's kind of pretty. So, yeah, right like that. And you can, give them more. I like these real lost, soft edges. You can give them more of an edge if you want. That's all up to you. You just roll the brush over with some more light color and you create the light edge. I'm going to create a bit of one right in here a bit more. I like that. But that's a long expanse of light right there, so maybe a bit of the blue in there. Back and forth with the light and the blue a little bit. Pulling that violet out. It's just such a pretty little... I love that color combination. Okay, let's get back. Some simplistic. So I'll take some of my blue, some of my violet. This is darker colors, actually. Darker violets, a little bit of light, a little bit of the white. And we'll paint just some blobs, basically, here. And this is where the filbert really shines. Because I can just push and twist the brush here to paint out some blobs that kind of look like little blossoms. And maybe a bit of the shadow color here. Down like this so that we just want to have some of this and some of this here. Like they're coming in some nice softer colors here, blues and violets here. Shadows. Maybe the look of it, so I got that nice shadow, but maybe the look of a petal here starting to form up, right? But you're painting mostly, if you look at them, they're just blobs of color kind of smooshed around. Those are the young ones, just beginning to open up to here. And just like that, and these two are too much the same. I like them, but they're too much the same. So what do? We're going to put some green down through them, change the direction of this one, but put some of that nice wild green right in there. Change the direction of this one. Get some of those. Might have to let it dry a second, because it'll go really gray on me without that green and this in there, but we'll see. That's kind of pretty. Some soft right out here. Some soft. Just marks. Right out through, as I'm coming down through here, I'm just going to do the impressionistic marks. And I'm not going to get wild and crazy. Just some marks. And then I'll take some mid-tone, soften into them here. So I'm painting marks back and forth here. Instead of the petals, I'm painting more marks, which looks completely different than painting the petals. Does that make sense? And I can blur some here so that it doesn't, and I'll look to just make sure that it's not taking away from the painting too much. Maybe a real soft one right out here. Just marks. here, out like that. That's kind of pretty. Now let's get into, first we'll come in with our burnt siennas and green and blue, a little bit of red violet. This is my real deep darks here. So I'll use these in a few areas inside the center here. Here, pull this out a bit. Inside the center there. And some of it right up in here. Some of it I might just push a leaf and stuff right up in front of that guy, which gives, which is going to push him back. We'll put some light color in there in just a second. Here. You can use your darks to wiggle and vary the edges of your petals as well. Here, a little bit here, coming down, right like that. That's kind of neat, right? Here, some of the color. You don't have to express very much of it. That's just a little bit of the color. And before I really go into, I'm going to rinse my brush here. Before I go really into the lights and put in some leaves, let's take our blue and our white, go back to our light, maybe a little bit of the phthalo. This will take it to a blue-green slightly, a little different from the blue-violet. Let's try some of this color coming in, working into that to create a bit more color contrast. Here, some of this in. Here. Right like that. I'm going to set this in and then set some more greens. Go back and forth. Sometimes I'll go back and forth several times. So I like that little softer right in there. And some chunky marks too. Here, use the break up. Let's put a bit of this right out here. And I'll add some extender here. Maybe some of my other blue. So I know there's sapphire underneath there. So if I want to soften that in, I can run some sapphire in there because I know sapphire is right underneath there. Does that make sense? So I can soften some of those colors into each other there. That looks kind of neat. Soften that a bit. Pull some of this right into that. Soften some of that back. That's kind of fun. So we'll go back. So we're painting this with a number 10 filbert and a 1-inch brush, basically, right? Let's get some nice medium green, little burnt sienna, little yellow, some of the blues. Here, some whites. We'll put in some softer greens here. Some softer greens. Casual. We'll put some lighter greens in too, but we'll break up some of these with some softer greens here, right? You push that out and around. Here. So I'll go, and sometimes I'll flip back up over to my dark and reset a dark, but I like to set some of the mid-tones as well. And then we'll set out a few light. You know, they have these elongated like leaves, very elongated. And so if I paint, a lot of times I don't paint specific leaves. You know, I do sometimes with the roses and stuff. You've seen me, but I don't always too much. But I have a few areas here that I just might get a little more specific here, just by doing the idea. Oh, I like that bit of blue in there, though. A lighter blue. lighter blue-green. Here, a little bit more specific with a few marks of those leaves. But you can see some real specific ones there. If you want to emulate those a little closer, you can. And I'm just going to give the idea of the movement of them, I think, rather than get too carried away in a copy of them. Here, like that. Some of those, leaves make a wonderful bridge through a composition. So if you feel like your flowers are too light, and the eye bounces too much, let me show you. Let's go just a touch lighter, a little bit lighter yellow and maybe a bit of the blue. Get a little different. That phthalo is a beautiful blue to mix in with the yellow and get slightly brighter green. Here, different green. But I can increase the white and that green, and that gives a little bit more of a punch to that leaf. And if I put a few of those colors like right in through here, punch those up, they become a bridge between the flowers. Does that make sense? And so your eye travels through the light colors. And it's a good thing in composition. So maybe I will put a lighter one right in here, just like this, in between these two flowers here, and my eye no longer jumps between the two flowers. It bridges. I always call them a little bridge. Then I can pull a little softer shadow out here. But your eye travels down through now, see? And that's a good thing to remember here. I used to teach this all the time in composition, floral compositions, and how do you use, and I do it in the color theory classes, because that's really kind of a color theory thing, is using your leaves as bridges between your flowers here. And so, yeah, and they work here. Here we go, just like that. Just a little bit there. Just do a little bit lighter right here. Yeah. A little bit lighter yellow-green to the little tips. Oh, this is a good area for some right here. So Phthalo Blue, Hansa Yellow, and white. Making some beautiful little leaves here. Coming out a few, not quite as light as I go further down, so we'll want some of this to soften out a bit as I come down. Some other little marks out here. Right like that, nice soft leaf going right up there. It's kind of pretty. That flower has a bit of a light ring around it, which I don't like. So I'll just take some of my green here, paint right over into it, and blur this whole thing. See, I take that ring away here. Maybe an edge of that lighter green right here, and another type of leaf right there. Like that. Boom. So now that ring, so I look into those things. Do I have a light ring? Sometimes I'll develop that. After you've painted something several times, you can develop that little light ring. So that'll go around. So overall, boy, I kind of like that. I'm going to get rid of that green. I could use that green. You could use that green through any of your composition here. Now, we did the blue in here, right? Which was our sapphire, which my sapphire here is almost completely gone. So But it is completely gone. So I'll just squirt out a little bit more here. So this is the Sapphire Blue. And when you look at these tubes and stuff, you see right here that it's 15:3. That's Phthalo Blue. The BB29 is the ultramarine blue, black and white. That's how we make it. So there's that little fly. It came back. So we'll take that with some white. That was some of our initial blue. Maybe just a touch of that violet in there. Real pretty little soft color. But you can add some of this to your leaves. So maybe a bit to the leaves to get a softness to those as well. See, it's really kind of pretty here. That's up to you. It's real kind of neat. Add a bit of that. You could add the blue a little bit more powerful if you want. Yeah, it's just... And I'll always go back, maybe after I paint some of this, and revisit like that top one up there again. This dirty brush leaves some of that blue in there. I like that. Maybe bring that up even one more little bit. Maybe a touch of the violet in that. Pull back through there. Just a bit more color interest and stuff into it. Let's take the white, lean over onto the edge here. Get more of a petal edge there. That's pretty. Little petal edge here. There. Yeah, I like that real big one right there. That's nice. Came out kind of neat with painting it back and forth. And these just softening down through there. Yeah, and so it's kind of a neat little painting. You could have, you know, one of the things I do like to do is I'll take a dark, so let's go back to a dark, a little blue, a little violet into my greens and stuff here, burnt siennas here. And dark is your contrast here, so you can come back in and just add little sparks. And you've seen me also go through the paintings. Remember especially the last couple lessons, come through the paintings, even in landscapes, and add little sparks, little touches of color here. You know, you can add little stem lines here that are just coming out and stuff like that, pulling down. You know, just movement lines here. Ideas. But little, and I love to do this with the filbert, because the filbert I can just roll the edge, use just the edge, maybe a idea of a vein line there. But I use just the chisel edge of it. It's got a sharper, because you can get up over to the point. That's one reason why I really use it over the flat, is I can roll over onto that corner. I use the corner of that more than anything else to do chisel work and stuff like that. So, you know, but you can also take some of these light yellow greens here, bright, add some whites, and these would make great, you know how I like little sparks, little touches and sparks of color, which lighten up the design as well. So I just grab those, and they're like this little lights, sparks is what I call them, little sparks of color here. And movements here. There, quick little movements. And see, as I start to add those, notice how the painting becomes a little bit more airy feeling, more lighter, you know, feeling. And that's what happens with those when you start to add those little sparks. Yep. Here we go. There, just like, there we go. Fun, fun, fun. Maybe a little vein line right here on that one. You know, you can, but there like that. Just little sparks of color. So it's fun. So there you guys go. That just gives you an idea. It's fun. It's fun to sit there and develop a painting like this. You know, you could put in more. This one has a little more darks. You can get those darks in there if you want to get that light dark contrast. That's up to you. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. But when you're developing a painting like this, is that you start out and when you start building it, don't try to take that front flower at any time. This is my one advice to all of you that really want to learn how to paint flowers. Don't get so focused in on that one main flower so long that you're not moving through the composition. Because, and that little fly, yeah, that you're not moving through that composition. And so you want to get in there, you know, address that, move through the composition, then come back and you can address that flower again. And you may, like I did here on this one, I really like that flower. You may paint something into it that gives you an idea about what to address up there on your main one, see? So it can all change. And, you know, do I need to have some more lights? I do like this darker blue. You know, I might like to see some, you know, violets or something like that in there. There's a lot of things. So like some of this other violet colors, you know, you can add accents. So we have the accents of the light spark. You can take the violet and the blue and get that little fly out of there. But the violet and the blue can become an accent as well if you like that kind of color in there, see? So a little bit more of that violet and blue here. That's pretty, maybe a little heavier to the violet. And you can use that in accents out here as well to give just a little more. You know, color is so great in a painting, but that will give a little more color contrast. But if you don't want that color contrast, you don't have to have that. But that just gives you a little more color contrast. I like that little touch, maybe a little blossom right out there. So, you know, little bits. Just fun little stuff, okay? All right, so that gives you kind of an idea. I see this one. Probably want to pull it in a bit there. There we go. Maybe a bit more light, and then I'm going to call it here on this one because I kind of like it. A bit more light and a little touch of yellow right to the front. Give it more of a front of a flower. I like it, okay? But you can darken it up, add whatever you want, you know, that gives you some ideas. But work through your composition, guys. Don't get focused in on one flower. It happens a lot to us, me too. You get frustrated on a flower and you focus on that flower and, you know, everything goes haywire on you. Get out, move, go do something else, and then come back and work it again. You know, it gives you more ideas, okay? All right, so there you go. We have more paintings and more lessons and stuff coming up. Don't forget to go over and check the Paint It Simply one because I have some boards right here. I'm going to go over and do a couple rose lessons and stuff over on the Paint It Simply and release those at the same time this one's coming up. So go over to the Paint It Simply channel. If you don't know that, just go up there to the search bar, put in Paint It Simply, and you'll see our channel. It's the Paint It Simply channel, okay? All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to hit like. Please hit like on these videos. That really helps a lot. Hit like, share it if you can, and help us promote the channel, okay? All right, I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.